We're on.
February 5th at 5:01 p.m.
Let the record show that a quorum is present. This meeting has been duly called and notices of this meeting have been posted in accordance to the Texas Open Meetings Act. 551.074. We're going to closed session.
It says welcome, pledge allegiance, mission and vision, and then closed session.
Thank you. All right. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. We will now say the vision and mission statement. Ms. Rodriguez Barnett, do you know? Either one.
I can't do that part. You know I know them, but it's that pressure.
That's okay. Sorry about that.
Best
Oh, I can do that.
And Texas really provide an equitable education for all scholars to graduate ready to become leaders in our community.
I can do
Thank you so much. Ms. Cortez, could you do the other?
Collectively, as a community, Manor ISD provides equitable resources, a safe learning environment, and high-quality educational services for all scholars to successfully achieve and reach their full potential.
Thank you. We will now adjourn to closed session at
5:03 p.m.
All right. Pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, 551.074.
There's
I know, that's what I was just asking, how much am I taking with them?
Nothing.
I'll just go like this.
I'll tell y'all when we get back there. You don't have to take much. We should. The board will now reconvene in session at
5:32 p.m.
We'll move on to item 6, public forum. Ms. Perez, do you have any? Thank you. I'll move on to action item. Consideration and adoption of the resolution supporting the administration of Manor ISD applying for the Juvenile Justice Insurance and Prevention Grant Program. Dr. Simon.
As you might read in your notes, we have a resolution that we need in order to apply for a grant to get extra money for the district. And so it's really just a resolution supporting our application. Nothing more to it than that.
So this is it. I should read it.
You don't have to read it. They all have a copy of it. We just need a motion. We have a motion document for anyone who wants to make a motion. The resolution itself looks like this.
Anyone have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the board approve the resolution for the Juvenile Justice Inclusive Prevention Grant as presented.
I have a motion by Ms. Guerrero. Do I have a second? Second by Dr. Thomas. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0. We're going to now move on to item 8, information item, procurement and facilities construction processes and first reading, CV local proposed changes. Mr. Fallon.
Along with the thoughts getting up there, I am going to hand you a whole lot of paper.
Okay.
This is, some people I know like it, paper. This is for you to read now, read later, or not. It's up to you. Just a preview. I'm going to give you a copy of all the policies, hard copy, that have to do with procurement, both construction and otherwise. You can see the actual documents policies. I'm going to give you a copy of what we call a red line. This is a CV local. This is this copy. This is the important one because this is the changes that the administration is proposing. And we'll put it in front of the board for a vote in the February if it's so desired. And so Mr. Solomon, what he's going to present here is the process and procedures we would use based on the new policy, which isn't really all that different than what you're used to see. Adding one other little handy document, we use this internally, but we thought this would be a really good summary. This is a quick and easy way for our employees to be able to see how they're supposed to do procurement. It's a very quick and easy. Basically summing up your city, local, and legal policies in one page. So it might be easy for you. So I'm going to come around and hand them out to you, and we will let Mr. Solomon get going on that process.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Sullivan.
so thank you very much for letting me present. If you have any questions, just these workshops and formal, just go ahead and stop me. So let's go to the next. Here's my clicker. Okay, so first thing is the operative law. Texas Education Code 44.031 is all about purchasing contracts, and you've got all these different sections in it. I'm not going to focus on every single one. We're going to talk about a couple different things: purchasing methods, best value. Some of the stuff is very specific, isn't necessarily in CV local. CV local deals with facility construction. CH local and legal deals with just overall purchasing. Next slide. Okay, so under the purchasing guidelines, we have 3 different levels. That's what that quickie handout shows you. So keep tapping. So the first level is everything under $10,000. That is a certain set of rules. Next, $10,000 to $50,000, different set of rules. And last, items that are over $50,000. Okay, next slide. So this is a snapshot off that. So under $10,000, all we require is one quote. So we need some proof that there, before we go out and actually acquire something, you can give us something and say, oh, this is what it costs. You don't need to do an extensive study to prove the cost. When you went to a vendor, it's an active vendor of ours. You can't just go pick any vendor in the world. They need to have all the documentation in. You get the quote, that's the proof, we move on. Next slide. So once you go above $10,000 but stay below $50,000, now one of the ways you can do it is if you can get somebody, a vendor who is part of a purchasing cooperative. The understanding is the cooperative, their purpose is to go out and get the best price. So they've done the work instead of us doing the work. So you can just go to one cooperative, get that price. Now, if they're not part of a co-op or cooperative, then we're going to require, internally, we'll do some work. We'll get 3 quotes. Make sure that we're getting the best price. So this happens all across the district. People go out, they get 3 quotes, then they have to turn in something called a quote summary, in which they can take a look at the 3 quotes and write a justification why they're picking the one of the 3 that they are. It's not always because it's best price. Often it is, but it's not always just the lowest price. Sometimes they're not comparable because you can't, when we purchase things, sometimes in education, it's not always the same thing, but you got as close as you want. Sometimes we don't actually have 3 quotes. We've attempted to get 3 quotes, and you just can prove that out. Okay, next slide. So purchasing guidelines for things greater than $50,000. Next slide. So first thing, there's a couple different buckets of things. The first is professional services. Tap away. So when there's professional services, we need to do an RFQ or request for qualifications. In some worlds, RFQ is thought of a request for quote, but not within school finance. We're doing a request for qualifications. That's to be publicly published, so it's open to the world and anybody can bid on it. There's multiple predetermined factors that we use. And administration is going to take the factors that's part of the publication, and that's how we're going to apply to grading the submissions that we receive. We can't control whether we get 1 submission or multiple submissions, but we're going to go ahead and grade everybody. And then once that happens, then administration will create this pool of vendors. And so we're going to take everybody who qualifies, because either you're going to qualify in or you're not going to qualify. We'll put everybody in the pool, and then on a case-by-case basis, the administration would then pick to use vendor A, vendor B for professional service. We stop right there for a quick second? Just can you go back, go over clicking? So the multiple predetermined factors, those are based on legal. It's not stuff we just make about thin air. It's actually in the education code what factors we're allowed to consider.
And so just so you know that that's not something we come up with.
Well, and I guess while you're on that note, so just to be clear, the 50,000, that's also set by the state or
No, that's.
that threshold? That's us.
That's set by us.
It's pretty standard.
It used to be 25,000 and we upped it a few years ago.
It's both.
Yeah.
It is set by the state, but we also have something that we have that's identical to that. But there, if you go back into that, if we went back into the education code, the $50,000 does show up there.
Mr. Solomon, on the below 49,000, what is the timeline or time frame that you use of getting those quotes? Like, that was a 10-day or what?
There isn't
Or could it
necessarily.
go 3 months?
Yeah, there isn't necessarily a timeline, but the quotes have to be valid. So you can't have something where I got a quote, the quote expired in the course of me getting 2 other quotes, and now I submit, here are 3 quotes. They all have to be valid, because different organizations, different companies will give you a quote that is valid until X.
Okay.
So X needs to be when you're done. Because we've had that, and then we will vet that stuff and kick that stuff back, like, I need 3 quotes that are currently valid. But the timeframe it varies about how fast the person is working on this.
Jeff, could you describe how the board could choose to use a different threshold? The $50,000 threshold?
The board could choose to use a different threshold if they wrote it as part of a policy change. However, the 50,000 is in the law, so I'm not really sure. I think before I was here at some point it was $25,000.
Yes, and if
So
the
that's a
law
more-
was 50,000, then why were we able to do that?
Yeah, you can go, you can change.
You can always go more restrictive locally.
Okay.
just can't
in
go
our
higher,
local
is that-
policy.
That's my understanding, is you can't go higher. So you could
Okay,
make any more restrictive rules than what the law states. But my understanding is you can't make less restrictive rules. So you have legal's the one that we don't have any control over.
Mhm.
And if the law changes, then that policy is going to change automatically. I don't think it has to be adopted necessarily. When that changes, that moves. But we can always write stuff that is less restrictive.
Yeah.
Or more restrictive than that.
So local law binds us to the 50,000 and above, or state law, and then our policy could lower that to.
Yeah, you could make 49 or it used to be 25.
Gotcha.
And in fact, in this policy, when the board made a change, they made a change to CH local and moved that to $50,000, I believe in March of 2021. This policy, we overlooked making the change. So that's one of the changes in this policy is to move it from 25 to 50 so that both policies align because they're supposed to be coordinated.
The other thing I want to bring up, in case professional services, you might want to explain like what types of professional services we're talking about. What's the next slide?
Next slide. Here's some examples of professional services. So it's not everything, but it's things where usually the person is a professional, have some type of professional designation.
And again, a lot of that's in the education code.
Yes,
Is legal separated or does it fall into one of those categories?
legal is not listed in the education code as a professional service, although accounting is, so that's how
So that
it's-
means you are an exception to code.
Yeah, there you go. No, I'm not a professional service, I'm an employee. That's it. Okay, next slide. So now we're gonna look at, so in procurement, so at the commencement of a project, the administration will select from the pool the best suited vendor, and then administration would go out and negotiate an agreement or contract, and then we would then come to the board and seek authority to sign that agreement, to execute that agreement. Make sense?
Yeah, I do have another question, just to go back. So let's say it's 50,000 is the threshold. So let's say there's 25,000 allotted for a specific project, and then there's another 30,000, you know, a couple months later for the exact same thing, is that something that they need to bring to us? 'Cause now we're talking 60,000.
Yes. So we track something called commodity codes. So if you're buying a particular type of service, administration can do up to $49,999. But then when we go over, then we're gonna add everything up cumulatively in a school year. Actually, we're moving it within a 12-month period. Within a 12-month period, if we're spending a certain amount, not from a particular vendor, but a particular type of service.
Gotcha.
So if we went back, and we're doing accounting services, and we did a bunch of different things, accountant A, and we went and did a $25,000 contract and came back later, and we need to do some other accounting stuff for $30,000. I can't just go, I'm gonna do 25, and if I get to the last 5, no, as soon as we wanna sign an agreement for 30, which will take us to 55, we would need to come to the board first before we did anything. In fact, that's what the construction stuff has stuff in there about having project scope. And I'll talk about, I didn't have slides on this, but we can talk about some of the language that's in the change. There's a couple things in there about the projects.
So you just can't keep going 25, 25, 25 for the same thing?
No, you can't beat the system that way by just a whole bunch of $45,000 procurements. You just get around, you never have to come to the board.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah, that's a good point.
So it's just a cumulative amount, right?
I'm sorry?
So you're saying that it is a cumulative? amount.
Yes, and it's per vendor, but it's also per type of purchase. So I can't just decide that, say, I'm gonna buy, if we commodity coded it down to a really small level, let's say paper, copy paper, and go out and I'm gonna just buy copy paper. I'm gonna buy some at Amazon and some at Office Depot and some here. And as long as I just dump over 50 with any one of them, no, we're gonna add up all that. If that copy paper, we buy more than 50,000, we don't. We bought more than $50,000 worth of copy paper, we'd have to come to the board, the purchase that puts us over. Once we're over any further purchases, all we've done is you've approved the ceiling. So if we're gonna raise that ceiling, we have to come back again. So I do 25 and then I do 30, now I'm at 55. The next dollar I wanna spend above 55, we have to come back to the board again and seek an additional approval. One of the things we've tried to do by the renewed contracts at the beginning, when we do the budget, is have a ceiling that encompasses everything we believe we're going to spend for the year, so we have that authority.
Okay. So, and I'm glad you clarified all of that, because that's just like, okay, people can come in or 40 or up to $49.99. So that, like you said, is a year time frame that you're monitoring that. And then you mentioned back about the pools, like how the pools, wherever vendor from the pool, like services. So how often do you update the pool? What are the, I'm just, I remember like when we first came in, Melinda, prior to you, like they redid all everything, and then they had a whole pool of different type of people that might work for the district for different departments.
Right.
So like, and I know the conversations before last administration left, said that they were gonna redo the pool. So I don't know, like, I guess my question is how often do you update?
So I'll give you an example related to the last bond. There was underwriters, financial advisors, bond counsel. Okay. At that time we did it, and I believe all the contracts that were of everyone who was in each of those pools, they're offered a 2-year contract with 3 1-year renewals. So they got basically, as long as we kept renewing them, and they chose to take the renewal, 5 years. 5 years is going to be this year. So we're going to go back through at some point this year and redo the pools. Let's say I do a pool and I get, 5 people in the pool, and right after that, Stan comes to me and says, I want to be in the pool. Like, well, you can't, you had your public opportunity to be in the pool until we go out and redo the pool. If we go, gosh, I really want to have Stan, then what we're going to have to do is redo the whole thing. Basically redoing the pool. We have to go through and do all the work. Now, we don't have to do it every 5 years. We could do it, if that's a decision that we can be flexible about that. If like, for example, if like a lot of people start dropping out of the pool. So like they do a contract renewal, right? And they decline the contract renewal because they can choose like, no, I don't want to continue in the pool. You get down and like, I had this pool of like 10 or 15 vendors. All of a sudden I found out I've got like 2. We might make a decision at that point. We're going to go out and we're going to redo this to open it back up because we really need a pool, and 2 isn't what we consider a pool.
You have to make
Yeah, I was gonna tell you, it's one of what districts normally do is they kind of follow for a lot of these, for their bond projects. And so you've got a bond 2019 and a full of engineers and architects. And as that project begins to wind down, there's not really a need for a pool as much. Well, when the next bond gets called, you'll reopen and do a whole thing again and let everybody apply for this next set of bond projects. And so you'll have a whole underwriter, bond counsel, you can do all those.
It's all coming this year.
So that's kind of what the normal thing about it is. And now just from a personal leader perspective, we have some of these other type of services. Legal services comes to mind. I think it's important just every so often that we need to go back and just put it out there. Because I think it's important to see what is out there every so often. We just did one for realtors. I expect years from now, we're gonna refresh it just because after a while, we just wanna make sure that they don't forget that there is competition out there.
Exactly.
I think that's good value for our taxpayers.
Different things are on different schedules. So the banking one, for example, actually is TA mandated. We have no flexibility in anything. The RFP that goes out is very specific. It's on the TA website. This is what you put out. And the contract you sign with it is for 2 years, one biennium. That's it. So we approved a new bank last year, but that didn't start until July 1 because that's what the agreement says. So we could start doing stuff with them, but they weren't our official depository institution until that agreement kicked in, but it only lasts for 2 years. That's going to have a regular 2-year cycle. But everything else, it depends. It tends to, there's a whole group of stuff that's bond dependent, and those tend to just run with the bonds. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so for goods or services that are non-professional, then we're going to go with an RFP. It's a request for proposal. So again, same type of thing where if they're not part of if they're part of a co-op, again, they've done the vetting to make sure you're getting best value, you're getting best pricing. So if they're part of a co-op, we can get 3 quotes. Normally, you wouldn't get, we've had this question come up, I wouldn't get quotes from the same co-op. Because supposedly each co-op is trying to find the best value. If I picked 2 from the same co-op, that would be really weird. So they went through and discerned which were the 3 best. But a lot of companies are members of a lot of different co-ops. And so they will tell you, because we'll ask that question, are you a member of a co-op? I'm a member of one GPA or one other. And so you just don't want to make sure that you're doing that. And we watch that. You don't get 2 people who say, I'm in this co-op. And it ends up being the same co-op because you want to make sure that it's independent and you're getting the best value for it. But most often what happens is that over $50,000, we're going to do an RFP or a request for a proposal. So we're going to go through the entire process to put this out publicly. Go to the next slide.
Jeff, that is where the $50,000 statute applies.
Yeah, definitely. So this from the code are the 9 different factors that you need to put into an RFP, very specifically. Next. And what you'll notice is, let's see if it flashes, is you always have to have the purchase price. That has to be the largest weight of everything. That's also a requirement. Now, it can be equal with something else, but it has to be 1 or 1A on your list. And so you're going to look at, we're going to have, again, we don't have control over what are requirements, how am I going to determine, how am I going to grade and evaluate this RFP? We've already been told these are the 9 factors. So a year ago when we went out and looked for for new software for the school district that we brought to you frontline. We went through this exact process, we looked at all this stuff, and we evaluated all of these different factors. Okay, next slide.
So the purchase price could vary depending on materials or equipment, right?
Absolutely.
So,
But you
so they
gotta-
have to be the same. When you compare purchase price or final price, it has, so for instance, I don't know, MacBook.
Mhm.
Buying MacBooks at a certain price, and then you're gonna buy an HP. One may be cheaper than the other, so if one's providing HP,
Right, go back one slide. Yeah, so you're gonna evaluate all of these
Right.
things at the same time. What you're gonna say is, let's say purchase price is gonna be, I don't know, 50% of the grade.
right, so for instance,
So
like
you
in
give it a
construction,
4,
you can
he
go
gives it a-
higher on the final price, it could be higher than, the one you accept could be higher depending on what it is exactly that they're giving you. They could be adding an extra studs or putting something extra safety on there that costs more that you would go with.
Yeah, so that's different. So on the one hand, you've got this process in which we're using this to evaluate and rank everybody, figure out who we should be using. Just have to make sure that purchase price is the highest weight. It doesn't mean that necessarily when you rank all of these and when everybody evaluates them, that the lowest price is necessarily going to be first.
We know the lowest price may not be the best materials or the best
That's what we're
value.
doing, right.
Right, so
Exactly.
we always have to take that into account.
It's just one of those things that they require that you make a purchase price. Doesn't have to be a majority, it just has to be the highest percentage. I mean, you're gonna divide everything up to 100%, so it's rarely like less than 30%, but you might have a couple things that are 30%. It just has to be one of them. You could have more than one thing at 30%.
Who scores those, Jeff?
It changes, it depends. I've tried to implement that we want to have people scoring these that are people that are invested in what is going on. So usually we'll have, first of all, I have our purchasing coordinator does a pass-fail evaluation, which is separate from this. Do they submit all the documents? Do they qualify? Are they active vendor? Those types of things. That always happens on all of this stuff. There's always a pass-fail on it, but then we usually use people who are in it, who are invested in it. So as an example, when we did the Realtor, Dr. Sermani and Mr. Mendez and I were the 3 evaluators.
Do sometimes you decline responses? Do you turn away RFPs? You said pass fail, so sometimes bidders
Yes.
or respondents
People
fail and don't go forward.
Yes, people do fail because they don't submit all the documents. That's usually the number one way that people fail is they just don't turn everything in. It's a little head scratching, I think. But sometimes some of it's just sometimes the basic documents they don't turn in, or they don't answer all of them. It's not a full response. And we also have people who take stuff out and then they don't even get to pass fail because they don't complete the submission.
And the procurement function, right, has the administrative authority to turn away fails.
Yes,
Okay.
we should be.
So, do you have a minimum review evaluators or maximum of number of?
There isn't a minimum or maximum. I mean, there isn't anything that's in policy. It's never been one. We've done several now that we've done 3.
Okay.
When I talked about the one where we looked at the software system for the school district, there were over 15 people on that committee. Because everybody was part of developing that entire RFP, which was ginormous. So I wanted to have everyone who was vested in that decision.
So do we need to put something in policy that it's never one person? Because that would concern me, that if there's no number, that you can say, well, we just have one person to do the evaluation of what it is, and that will determine. That would be uncomfortable for me. 3 to me is a good number because you got a good balance, and 2 can override the 1 and not have 100%.
Yeah, it's certainly something, I don't think I've seen it in policy, but there's certainly something we can put in regulations internally in our document.
It's more procedural than
Mr.
policy.
Solomon and I have been talking about getting more and more of that kind of written out, like I've seen.
Yeah, because I don't want to leave it a choice to answer that we just got, which was you know, there is no number, so then it's open for us to do whatever.
I think we want to have the, like I said, I think you want to have it, you want to give ourselves the flexibility to open it up, but we also don't want to have it so
Yes.
small that
Oh, no.
it's inconsequential,
Agree.
or one person's making a decision.
Yeah.
Right.
I shall make it so
Okay.
as of tonight.
Jeff, what happens when you only get one respondent? What's been the practice here?
The practice here is we've moved forward with that. We brought stuff to the board with even one respondent. I haven't been happy about it, but on some of the assessment projects, it's been a matter of time, and so we've moved forward with that stuff. Documentation showing that we only had one has
Well,
gone.
I should say, he's leaving part of that out is, we actually stopped and started calling and trying to reach out and trying to get people. And like,
Yes.
even like the one he's talking about, there were 42 companies that actually investigate. You can see when they're pulling in the documents, you can see who's, and we can document how many people calling, but in the end, only 2 people actually applied. And
So then as far as written policy, what do you plan on putting before us as written policy? Is the procedure would be what, just keep going until you get more than one?
I don't know if it would be keep going till you get more than one, because sometimes I think if you only got one and they're good, you go for it. I think the key, what you're talking to is, if you only get one, we have to make some sort of effort to go out and try to find more. Because you always want to go for best value for the district and taxpayers. And so the more competition you get into, the better. But there is times when you just can't find, especially if you're talking about certain commodities that are, I don't know, that operate many companies that do it.
So, and the reason I ask that is because if we're planning on putting it in writing, you have to be specific, because then now it's letter. So if you say that there's exceptions to that, then you have to write it down. It should be clear.
Mr. Martinez, I believe it would be procedural, not policy.
So is that what we're talking about right now then, just
Yes.
procedural, which has been the procedure?
Yeah, this would be something I would think we would want to have in procedure. There isn't currently any policy that talks in the weeds about how you go through an RFQ or an RFP. It talks about you need to go through one, but it doesn't talk about how you conduct it.
But good point, though. I think that's something that we can go look at. I actually pulled a couple of other districts' procedural manuals to help guide us in writing this, and I'll look at what language they have there. But you're absolutely right, when you get it down in writing, so everyone can see it, date stamp it, and it exists, we'll put it on the website once it's all done. But I have that note down here about what to do if we only have one applicant, to go out and find more, or if we eventually decide to go forward, this would be the reasoning we would go forward with just one.
And I
I know there's a couple times where we had one, and then there's been times where we just, okay, we're gonna pull it back.
Yeah.
And put it back out again. And we got one we get the same one the second time, and you're like,
yes. And then
well, we could just not do this, or we could do this.
and you're running the risk of the timeline getting passed when you need the reason that you needed to have the work done. So I'm really familiar with, sometimes it is just one. But I also like the fact that you went and reached out to try to get more. But we gotta not let that go on 5 months.
Right.
Cause then you're not meeting the other timelines.
Yeah, on multiple of the RFQs we've had out, RFPs, we've absolutely had limited response and extended 2 weeks, 3 weeks to then try and gather more. But we haven't usually done a second extension.
Go ahead.
So, my question, or going back to procedure and everything, you went back to like the evaluators, and I guess, I don't know if you could put it in, you were gonna research in the procedure system, like, you talk about 3, 5, I would imagine there has to be an odd number, so you can get the best, so 3, 5, 7, how do you determine when to use 3, 5, and 7, and then who would be the qualifiers one, like, if you're gonna do curriculum and you put somebody in maintenance, I don't know, I'm just saying,
We'll definitely write
It's
that
just
down.
it's just a balance,
So I would tell you, historically, it hasn't always been like that. When I got here, honestly, some of the construction contracts were certain people who were involved and then a random selection out of a pool of people, which to me wasn't the best way to do it, because some of the construction contracts were evaluated by people who just really had no idea, I don't think, because we didn't put them in through any education about, this is what a CMAR looks like, and this is what a CMAR is, and they're gonna build this $40 million school, and we need you to evaluate these 4 construction companies for who would do the best job of it. And I don't think that we helped ourselves by having it was great to have the randomness, that it wasn't just, there's good and bad to being random.
And that was
That you're not, on the one hand, there's no favoritism, and we're not hand selecting who to do it. On the other hand, are you looking at people who know the project and have expertise?
And I think what I agree with the board is for sure we'll have a minimum of 3 on all these RFQs and RFPs. And I'm gonna write some language about those being persons that are both and interested and or qualified and understanding in working those things, those particular, what we call commodities or professionals. Because those persons will be better equipped to be able to review someone's resume to see if they're qualified or not. And I use resume, not just individuals, but like corporations, they essentially give us their resume when they are qualifying or trying to sell something.
So yeah, and then, so the only thing I would add to that again is, to Mr. Solomon's point, is that the procedures that were before he got here, who knows for how many years, were of such that you really do have to be specific on the language that you use and what the procedures are and what we should follow.
Go ahead.
So we're on next. Okay, so RFPs, where an RFQ tends to not be specific in scope. We want to go find an architect. An architect to do what? I don't know. That's why it ends up being an RFQ. I'm just looking to qualify them. I'm not looking for an RFP. I'm not looking for a specific proposal. We're going to do a bond. We know there's going to be some construction. I need people to architect buildings. I don't know what those buildings will be. In this case, it's very specific. So we're going to evaluate the submissions that we get on the RFP. The administration would then enter negotiations with the top-ranked vendor. If an agreement can be reached, we're going to come to the board and seek authority for the superintendent to execute an agreement. If we can't reach an agreement, then we're going to start moving down the list. We'll eliminate the first one. We couldn't agree with them. We'll go to the next one because they're ranked. They are, in all this, everyone gets a score. It's numerical. So those 9 different categories, however those 9 different factors, whatever percentage, the system we have will, you and you score it, and it'll come up with averages and it'll rank it and weight it that way. And it'll give you, and that's when we give you the rankings, all that stuff is all cooked into that. So everyone has a number, and this company got an 87, and that one got a 65, and this one got a 73. It'll put them in order, you can see them. So we'll go to number 1. If we can negotiate, great. This is what we want to do. We come to the board, get authority to go ahead and sign that agreement, provide you all the backup documentation. This is how we got to it. If not, we'll go to number 2. We go to number 2, then when we get an agreement, we'd come to the board and say, hey, we couldn't agree. Just so you know, this was number 1. We couldn't agree with number 1 for the following reasons. We're doing this with number 2.
Who is that? Who is doing that? Who in the administration or whoever it is negotiating with vendor X?
It depends upon what we're talking about. So if it's facility-related stuff, it's Mr. Mendez in operations area. If it's a financial thing, it would be me. It would just, if it's a curriculum thing, it would be Mr. Gunn. It would just depend. Because that's the person who brought whoever brought, really, it's whatever chief brought the project. And then obviously those agreements go through our attorneys to make sure we're doing everything that's in our best interest. I think that's it. Yep. So specific to this, do you have a question?
Is it That's it for procurement.
Yeah, and I was gonna talk about this a little bit.
And so my question that I've been asking for a while is that are we generating a hub for vendors historically underserved,
Underutilized business.
underutilized businesses?
I think
And I've been asking that for a while, so how is that addressed
We,
in our procurement?
so we recently started doing that, well, we're now starting to track that. So we've included that and we asked for a vendor packet, so they have to indicate that, and there is a place in our system for us to note that, so we can track that. We've also started reaching out to existing vendors, and we'll see what information we can get on them.
I'd like to, as you're doing it, and maybe some monthly basis, give us a report on what we're tracking for those.
What the categories are?
What are we tracking? Yeah, are we attracting any of those businesses?
And that could show up, Jeff, in your scoring matrix hub.
Could, but we're doing it more generally. We're not doing it for scored stuff, we're doing it for all vendors.
Mhm.
So the one we buy $10 worth of stuff from, we're gonna note that. It's not just the high value stuff.
So, I don't know, I thought there was you have to have a certain percentage of is there like a minority or not? I don't know what it's called. I don't know, and now it goes back to tracking
Can you go back 2 slides?
and how do you, I know we have to get the best of the best, or whatever
Right.
the services that we're trying to.
So the only thing I can think of is number 6. It is something that we score on,
Okay.
but there isn't a specific requirement that we do X percentage of business with this type of company or that type. I'm trying to we should be doing 100% of our business with the best value,
Yeah.
regardless of who it is.
And my reasoning is so that we can say that we are open to hub and that we are taking steps to have vendors do business with us. And if we don't have an active engagement or we're reaching out, and the reason for the tracking is to see how we're doing. Are we getting more? Are we getting any?
And the reason that I asked that question too is because I know one of the school districts or school board members, say Eames, they were like, oh my gosh, somehow they were not, I don't know if it was policy or state or whatever, they're like, oh, we need more hub, we're falling short, we have to have a certain amount of, we don't have any, so that's why my question goes to that, how are we tracking, are we, what's the balance? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's recent. We've only started doing this in the last couple of months, so we don't have a lot of data yet.
Okay.
Larger urban school districts have been doing it longer than Manor, okay, where we give a value and we have a disparity study that walks alongside this so that everyone gets those opportunities. But if they can't meet the criteria,
Right.
it's unfortunate, but at least they get considered. Because a lot of the small firms can't meet the needs.
And that's part of the challenge is that the bigger firms that don't have minorities as a part of theirs get all of the business. And I am aware of a couple of school districts that ended up in an audit that basically yielded the fact that they were shutting out all of the hub people from even getting in the door. And since we are a minority school district, I want to make sure that hub, which is, women, minority-led owned businesses, many of which are small, get the opportunity to do business with our district.
What I've seen historically for larger governments is that on the professional services side, what they'll do is any portion of that contract could be, you have to have a 5% or a 10%. So then they'll take a portion of that and make sure that the person who's submitting the bid also has an individual, and they've solicited at least 3 MWBEs to be able to respond to that, and then they're contracting out those additional services for a little piece of that contract.
In here lately in Texas, Hub has had some, conferences and workshops to kind of help all districts, you know, which I know you know. To know better how to reach out and for those vendors to get on the list for the school districts.
Okay, so then specifically on looking at the red line copy, I mean, the first thing we're changing in the first bit of red and in the 4th paragraph down is we're changing the $25,000 to $50,000 to align with CH local. The other thing was our policy before, it basically said, you're gonna recommend this, you shall do this, which gave us no flexibility. That's the first bit that's crossed out. This is the board, the superintendent shall recommend the project delivery method he or she determines provides the best value for the district. Now we're gonna go to a CSB process in which it's a competitive sealed proposal method, which is the recommended way to do it, but it gives the superintendent still the flexibility to say, well, in this particular case, we think this alternative method would be a better way to do it. And then obviously we'd have to provide a justification and a reason why we're not going with the CSP. Under change orders and contract amendments, it has a couple of definitions, only because below that, they're going to use the definitions. And the major thing that we're doing is what we're saying is, let's say we were going to build a school and we came to the school district and said, I'm going to build this new elementary school for $40 million. The school board would give authority to say, okay, we will establish the project budget for this school to be constructed, all in at $40 million. Then administration goes out and does the work, and we get an architect, an engineer, and a contractor, and we buy books and furniture and everything. And when we're all said and done, we did all that for $38 million. And that's great. Now, we might have some cost overruns here and there. We can have cost overruns totaling $2 million without coming back to the board for specific change order approval. Because we had a $40 million, that's the box that we're playing in. As soon as we're going to do some type of change order that's going to take us over $40 million, we'd have to come back to the board because now we're changing the project budget. As opposed to, obviously the superintendent and operations would be reporting to the board if we're making significant change orders along the way, but we wouldn't actually have to have an action item or a consent item on a board agenda would lock us in that we can't do anything, we can't actually make this change order until we come back to you. But if we are going to go above that $40 million, that mythical $40 million project budget, we can't do anything. We're stuck. If we're going to do that, we cannot go out and execute another agreement. We cannot purchase stuff under that until we specifically had board approval for that. The other thing is we ran all of this by our representative at TASB, and so she vetted all this stuff.
Let's make sure the board is comfortable with that kind of leeway there. So basically you have a do not exceed number you give me, and I do not exceed that number. But if we have a change order that won't take us over, then I'll do the change order, you give me that authority. So as long as the board is okay with that.
Unless the change order is over.
If the change order pushes us over that budget limit, I have to bring it back. I will not execute.
Okay. So on the reporting piece, is there a reason why we have superintendent versus the chief and bringing it back? Is it just because procedurally that's how we bring that?
That's how TASB does it. There's a legal thing that says just because my name's there doesn't mean it's not my designee. So
I think it,
And that's
Actually-
across the board. I'd like to emphasize that point on behalf of the superintendent. The word superintendent in policy in general also indicates designee.
I think there's actually, in the Bs, one of the B policies, because I specifically in one of these references had the superintendent or the designee, and TASB said, you just need to put superintendent. It's become extraneous and superfluous to have or designee, because you already have this covered in another policy where the superintendent can designate somebody else to do that. So that's why it just lists, because it's already taken care of elsewhere.
That's good to know for the policy reviews that we're getting ready to go into.
And then the
Thank you.
last change on the very last one is when a project hits its end date, its completion, rather than the board going out and deciding this project is complete, it would give the superintendent to have authority to say, this project is complete, and we can release the final bit of funds.
I think that was left over from a long, long time ago, it just never got changed.
So a groundbreaking and whatever the opposite, I guess the ribbon cutting, where there would also be a board vote at it.
Us ever going and saying this project.
It probably has never happened, but that's actually the way the policy is written. And this was a compilation of a lot of different, I looked at least 10 different board policies. Just to sort of, we pulled language from a bunch of different ones, so what we thought was just sort of best practice for us. Thank you.
I have the actual policies here. I decided not to bury you in paper, so at the end today, I can hand you out physical copies that you can go to see the much longer legal policies that back all that up.
Are you saying those are the ones that y'all reviewed?
No, these are the
Or the
legal policies.
Change.
Yeah. Well, we don't change legal policy. That's
Right,
that's your
no,
current
the
policy.
legal, sorry.
Yeah.
I know what you meant.
Could I just make a couple of comments, just in general? And Jeff knows this, and all the board members know this. The board's responsibility lies with what three funds?
General. Operation.
General, debt, and nutrition. Some people feel that bond is outside the purview of the board because it is not in that group of funds. It stands alone with its own fund, just like your 200 series, Title I, Title II, et cetera, whatever special revenue. Bond funds are the same, and literally boards every spring approve the budgets of those three that we mentioned, not these. So someone might recommend that the board's awareness is informational in nature and that the administration between the CFO and the chief of ops and the superintendent actually manage those funds. I just want to point that out, that not everybody does it exactly like it's happening here right now. Change orders, from my experience, I don't ever in 24 years saw a change order come to a school board. It's taken care of by the administration. Jeff outlined the rules within the parameters of the budget. And generally, I'm not saying this isn't about me, but I approve change orders. I just want to point out some things. I think Manor's in a growing place, right? You're on the edge of Austin, your enrollment's on the move. You're not always going to be a little district. You know, a few more thousand kids, things are going to differ. And I also want to point out the $50,000 board-approved threshold. If you query several school districts, east, northeast Texas, you're going to find some with none, no restriction at all. 250, 150, mine is 100. So everything under is everyday business. Above, you come, and I'd like to also stress that you're bringing the dollar amount. The vendor selection has already occurred by the method of procurement. The finance team is bringing a request to the board to approve spending above $50,000. That's what they're bringing.
Okay, so then that was my question. Is that a request or is that something that we're bound to by?
They're asking you to approve the threshold, because you're currently gonna ask to identify it to be 50,000. So everything 50,000 and above, should bring to you to say, can I spend this money from 199? Is really what they're asking you. He shouldn't even be bringing them for construction funds in reality, but can be a local call. If that's where the board wants to go with that. But that's that over 50K, I referred to it, right? And over 100K. I tried to get my board to go to 250, they said, we'll go 100. Because there's a lot of work involved.
Tell me again how many students in your district?
58,000. But there's a lot of work involved to formulate things to come to the board. And as we've talked, and you guys have heard me say, you have too much
Under consent.
business stuff in here that the administration is taking care of for you. And you could continue to do it as you wish, but you're developing bad minutes as a part of your program by having that there. And if your agenda is 3 pages long, 2+ of it are construction consent, generally. And like I said, that's a board's decision, but I'd like to say that you're spending your time on the wrong stuff. Okay?
Right, but then again, you have to adhere to laws. That's what my question was. Is there a law or code that binds us to the $50,000 threshold?
He's following that code already. Statutes indicating.
We can raise it.
We can raise it. So there
You
isn't
can raise it
something
here.
that legally binds us to that. That was my question. Specifically, that was my question.
I think if we really take a review of districts our size and see what their threshold is, Dr. Simone, maybe you can do that, Jeff. And if we all want to change that threshold, we can definitely bring it back and change the threshold.
No, I get all that. I'm just saying that we can do that if we
Yes.
want to.
Yes.
And there isn't something
No,
that's binding us. We're not gonna break any laws or rules by
No.
doing so.
Thank you, Stan, for one thing that I guess I was under the umbrella about. I thought that when we were getting change orders to be approved, that was something over and beyond what already had been approved. And I believe I'm hearing you say now that it is not. That has not been the case.
The project had been approved, but then they bring us any change orders over a certain amount. But the entire amount, yes, we
Had
already
been
approved.
So then, yeah, we are spending a lot of time and minutes on.
Well, not just that,
Because we
preparation.
do have one change order that is budget over on
Yeah,
transportation
okay,
coming up.
but
So
I'm
there is
thinking
one, I just want to be
that
clear.
the only, because I'm like, that's a whole bunch of changes that had to come to the board. So I just want to be real clear about what I'm understanding. And in light of what he said, that if it is not something that we are approving, that we've already approved the amount, but it's the work that we are approving, that at some point, we have to trust the person, the construction person, the financial person, to do their job without it having to wait a whole month, 30 days for it to come to us. We are slowing down the process, in my opinion, based on what you just said.
And why do you want to know
But
about
we
the change
hardly
order?
ever get change orders.
But what
Hardly
do you want to know there? What do you want administration to tell you?
Okay, so previously, not this board. I can promise you it has not been this board, and you were here before. So I think you know a little bit about the dynamic of the other board members that were here. And us as a whole, and what we were going through in past experience, and being able to trust the administration again. I feel as president, we are in that place now, so I am open to change. It's been a year since we've had a turnover on the board, and I think we're in a good spot. And I think the trust, and then with Dr. Sarmati, I trust this superintendent sitting here in this position and know that he would not steer us wrong. And so that was what we were dealing with.
But I think that's what we're talking about, right? I didn't hear anybody say anything different. That we set the budget, 40 million, let's say, for a project. As long as the change order doesn't go above 40 million, you make the call. If it has to go above the set budget, then you bring it to us, right?
Right, but
now
I
we're
think
looking at everything.
what Dr. Thomas and what Stan are saying is we can up it. And so that we're not spending so much time on the change orders, bringing it back to the board every single time.
Ms. Celadon, do you ever remember denying them?
No,
So these just.
there's not been one.
Because you have to complete it.
We're mixing up two different things. Change
Absolutely
orders
no.
is one thing. He's talking about the limit
The
for
threshold.
assigning authority
But I
for the
think-
superintendent.
It's all
But I
wrapped up
think
in
it's
one.
all wrapped up in the
Yes.
same
Sort of, because
discussion.
with one, you're talking about a specific project where you allocated a certain amount of funds already for that project. The other one, it could be anything. It could be because you want to buy new chairs. It's going to cost you less than $50,000, you make the call. The other one is like he said, so you have a project that costs you $40 million, as long as you don't go above that project number, then you can procure and change what you need if you have that room to do so. Whenever it goes above that number, this is what I'm hearing, right? Then you have to bring it to the board.
And that's where I use the word
So we
information.
just talk about whether we want to up
It's just
one or both.
Information,
That's where I use the word information.
like it could be in big rocks or whatever.
Because what is your bond fund, 260, 280, whatever your fund number is here? That's not a board approved fund, unless you guys are doing that here, but it doesn't have to be. So everything these gentlemen, these two chiefs share with you is for your information.
Right.
Unless you dictate that you must vote on what they bring you. Most often the time, it's already done.
Sometimes we're voting.
It's had to be done because it had to move forward. It's on the verge of being done. We can't wait another month on the board.
And sometimes also what hurts, I mean, this is from my perspective, but what hurts us too is to bring it to the board, but we could get it at a certain price, but then when we're waiting, inflation is going up. So by the time we come to you, it's already gone up 10 or 15%.
We're losing.
What I hear the board here, this is great, I appreciate it, I've got some direction, but I do want to let you know that based on your conversation, I'm going to have a conversation with our law firm because they have oftentimes told me, well, no, the board wants you to do it this way. And they're reacting to what they've been told in the past, and so I've been waiting to have this conversation. So what I'm hearing you want us to go to what I would call a normal procurement process, and I'm going to sit with Walsh. They'll never let us do anything illegal, believe me.
That's right.
But they have been telling me to do things the way I know we don't have to do them.
Bring it back to
Well, then
us.
bring it back to us.
Bring it back to us.
Yeah.
So
Bring them to.
all
the
I need you to
next
do,
board.
all I need you to do is vote on this policy. If you're good with that, I'll take care of the legal process from that point because they
That's why I'm a
will
little
know that you
confused.
have done
That's what
this.
we're voting on, to basically lay it out the way you're saying.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, with the policy, yeah.
Right.
And that's, and then just moving forward to is just to make it easy on staff and everything, what is just the usual customary threshold for a district our size in Central Texas or whatever?
We'll have to go searching around, but
I just want to make sure that we're doing right and we're not doing more work than what staff, they could be focusing on something else.
And not to be contradictory about that, the number of students has nothing to do with that. It is
Okay.
your local economic environment.
That
Rule.
related to that.
Go ahead.
But I do want to, the comment that Dr. Sermani, you said, and then Monique, you said, I think that things have changed a lot with this board. We have a new superintendent, and if that's the direction that Walsh is giving you, as your team of 8, I think that that's a conversation that we really need to be having in a team of 8 discussion. And, I mean,
I'm not sure why they're giving you
Walsh
direction.
here. We haven't seen Walsh, we haven't spent time with them as a team of 8. in quite some time to talk about board business and really what we're looking at in directing our one employee. So I think that discussion, that's a good place for big rocks or Q&A updates for sure. And then more specifically, a team of 8 discussion.
To me, it's a
Inviting
little
them back
concerning, to me, it's a little concerning
to
that
February.
our law firm is giving you advice based on people that are not here, rather than who is here. So I think, you know what I mean, that
Oh, I
sounds
agree.
pretty weird just in itself.
And I don't want to throw our law firm on the bus so much that I want to have this conversation together as a board to have your direction before I went and have this conversation. I have no problem talking to them and saying, this is where the team of 8 is at. But they technically work for you. And so I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. So if they decide to give you all a call after I talk with them, that you all know this is what we're doing. So that's the only reason why I waited to do this. And it's extra paperwork, but we did it, and now we'll tell them we don't need to do those things. Same.
Could I ask Jeff to point out, in Manor, or here at Manor, when does the confidentiality period start and stop around the RFQ, RFP? When do you go quiet?
Absolutely quiet is when it's out, but often if we know it's coming, it's usually it. I'll give you an example. We were meeting with HPM because we're doing active business with them, and we went out for the long range. We knew we were going to go out for the RFP for long range planning. As we're leading up to it, they're inviting us to stuff in the fall, just typical invitations, and we went quiet with them because we asked, we haven't put this out, you haven't seen it yet, is your intention to bid on it? And they said, yes, it's our intention to bid on it. So we're like, then we're going quiet with them. Outside of normal course of business, the management of the existing projects, but we're not going to go do anything on the side with them. But normally it's when that goes out.
Start, and then when it closes,
Yes.
or when the matrix, the study is
Usually until you've
announced.
announced it, which is usually a board meeting. So that's usually the end period. It's
So the
not
board
when they
member-
finish submitting, they submit it, we evaluate, once it becomes a public thing, again, at that point.
And all your committee members sign a confidentiality agreement?
Oh, yes, it's part of everything is actually done for us electronically. We use software, we use Bonfire. And
So do we.
that's the first thing that it's electronically, you can't see anything or do any work without electronically agreeing to confidentiality.
So do all board members understand that while something is posted, as we're referring, that if you get inquiries personally at the Walmart, wherever, the correct response is contact the purchasing department, or go on the website and look at that e-bid or how you post it.
And if someone does have a question, then we say, you need to write, we will respond back to them, but the response is, you need to go put it here, which is inside of the electronic bid, and we respond to it to the community of everybody who's in the bid. So you want to know what time of day you're going to, simple question, what time of day are you going to announce everything? And we're like, okay, well, you need to put that in there. We'll respond, okay, it's going to happen at 2 p.m. on Friday, whatever. And then
So they always
everybody's
share
publicly
everybody's.
getting it, instead of I can't have one-off conversations with different people.
Other districts will use that as I always thought it was a funny term, but cone of silence.
Cone of silence.
Cone of silence.
But we may have conversations
I've
with
shut 'em down.
people because we're not getting, so we've picked up the phone to say, I can see who's pulled documents. So I got 40-something documents and only had 2 people submit. I may pick up the phone and say, hey, I see you pulled documents, but you haven't submitted. What can I get? What can I do to encourage you to finish because the date's coming up? I can do that. We're not talking business. They're not whining and diming me in any way. I'm just trying to make sure we get a number of submissions.
Any more questions on this particular subject?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to elementary attendance zones. Does anyone need to bring?
Oh, no.
Before we get started, just know they're having technical difficulties, so they're recording sound in a different way, just so you know, so that we can have a video to post onto the website. We'll have to look at the video later to see how much of it got garbled.
Actually, if you don't mind, I will take a break. We'll do that.
Shut up, got it. Recent, oh, we can break for 5 minutes.
Let's do it. Board will now go into recess at,
6:39 p.m.
okay, let's do 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh, I'm such a wrong.
You know what I was thinking when you said that? I was thinking, you know how we go to conferences, that way they let us know, and there's like exhibit halls and all that stuff. I just thought, just to make sure. But, yeah.
But generally that talk
Does
isn't
it?
specific enough.
Oh, okay, I just want to make sure
You know, if
because,
someone asks, hey, are you guys, looking for whatever this year that's
because you
not
know,
specific
like,
enough.
there's these big, huge exhibit halls and then
But
you
if he's out for a particular service, and a vendor who provides that service attempts to talk to you while it's posted, you should refer them.
okay.
Because
No way.
Been in the district her whole career. I don't know the details. You just gotta, on my way here, I just gotta. I'm sorry, Ms. Celadon, if I've overstepped any boundaries that you have gave me. This is kind of like the last battle. You don't need to be. You pay me good money.
No, I'm good. Thank you. No, it's just up there. And I don't have to do it. I went to, judge.
Because that's the first time I was founded.
Is it the microphone?
And yeah,
That's a conversation.
so I went to now. And I had just got I had put my makeup on.
Who is that?
HPM.
Hewlett Packard?
I have no idea if it stands for record, but they're project managers, he knows.
Tell me, who is HPM? How did
It's
they get
Andrew, the
here?
tall guy.
How did they get
He's
here?
really tall.
Because they're not employees.
No, they're not. So they're utilizing some of our space upstairs that we had that were file cabinets.
What do they do for the district?
They're project managers and also
Bond
field.
funds?
Yes,
So when you guys passed the bond, you hired this company
that is
to
correct.
come in and manage projects.
A couple of the projects. Yes, so, and so they coordinate, they also offered some of their services. So we had like 36 different projects that we had. They took on 4 or 5.
So when they hire subs,
Oh, it's Dad's fault.
Yeah.
last time I have to go. Point of order.
All right, we will now resume from recess at,
6:47.
and the next item will be elementary attendance zones, item 8.2.
Before he starts the presentation, do we have timelines? I know we started the conversations and I'm seeing the elementary boundaries, and I know one of the hottest topics is always changing boundaries. So I don't know, we had timelines and how to promote, because we don't wanna bump into what we bumped in with Manor Middle School. We had all this stuff, so.
Well, I can answer that for you, and I didn't want to put anything out publicly until you
Okay,
saw it today.
okay.
We do have a couple tentative dates if the feedback here is to move forward and solicit feedback. We do have the survey ready. We have a couple of meetings that we're going to set up with the communities. Right now, I'm predicting a vote in the March. We could do it as early as the February one, but that is totally up to you all. Totally up to you all. You know the community, and you know what kind of feedback we need prior to that. And obviously, if you want to push that vote back further, you can. March is good because we have to set staffing. And so that's the only piece of that I put. I will let you know that as you'll see in here, the boundary change is not extensive in any way. It does affect 2 communities, unless you all want me to consider other things, which Joe will bring up, but right now I'm not recommending consider. 2 of the other changes are actually, one has no students in it, and the other change has 12 students that are already going to the other school, and I don't know why, that somebody never changed the boundary, but they're already going to this other school. So it doesn't, the two changes don't do anything, really, just acknowledges what we already know. So really, that's kind of this conversation, is to get that feedback from you all, and then we will either proceed or not, depending on how you all decide on our recommendation.
Okay, yeah, thank you, because I'm thinking this is already going out, and anyways, I just wanted to.
Well, we are live, so it's gonna go out now.
Yeah, it will be going out.
Just.
Well, we were due to send something out to the public no later than Wednesday to let them know we were considering these changes and that we will be having sessions to hear their feedback and also surveys. So if they don't want to come to the meeting, they can send it to us electronically so we can consider some of that feedback.
So I'm delighted to be here today with you and share some of our findings that we had and actually just go over some of the efficiencies and resources, utilization rates, capacity, enrollment projections that we have through our campuses. I have a couple of slides to show as well, so we can contrast like what we have now, what we're proposing as well, and then maybe look at some projections and outline some of the boundaries that we wish to change on there, some visuals on there. So I'll start with the first slide here. The first slide here, sorry. Yes. So what we've done is highlighted just the changes that we're looking at, but this is the existing map that we have right now. And these are this is the enrollment for the 23-24 school year with all our campuses there. I'll show you another slide here in a minute that shows you the percentage of utilization. So what the goal was is really to get our utilization in balance, right? Because we have some campuses at the 50% mark or 50% utilization, and we have some of them at 98% utilization, and then everything in between, 70s and 60s. So what we're trying to do is just really balance it out just a little bit.
Well, that's just one of the why. The other why, of course, is this will actually reduce the number of bus routes and reduce the number of minutes students are on buses. It's actually going to make their bus rides a lot faster. We have a couple of neighborhoods that are going past a school to get to another school. And so that's part of what this will do as well, more transportation efficiency, which, as we know, has been a sore point for a number of years.
So with the next slide here is that what we're showcasing here is go back one. Sorry. What we're showcasing here is the number of students, elementary students that would be affected. So we have 220 from the PME area going into the Blake Manor area. And then the other highlight would be 166 elementary students coming from the Decker to the Oak Meadows as well. As Dr. Shermani pointed out, this little section right there, we just kind of want to recalibrate that little section. That's where the Walmart ads and the Whataburger's at. So nobody really lives there, right? So, but it was, but the boundaries were set to go to, I believe, to Chevrolet, or I'm sorry, to the.
They were set to go to Chevrolet.
I'm sorry, Chevrolet, yes. As Dr. Somani mentioned as well, we have a little section here. There's only like two small apartment complexes that are out there, and they have 12 students total on there. But those students are already going to Pioneer Crossing, so we just want to recalibrate our attendance zones with that.
So question on that circle where there's 0.
Yes.
There's no change for the apartments that are right across the street, where the Sherwin Williams and everything just went up. Is that correct?
If
and
there's
the Grassdale, which is on 290, those two complexes, there's no change for those two complexes.
Right now, the enrollment that we have shows that we don't have any. We're not picking anyone up right now at that area.
Sounds like we need a community event there.
That is correct. So yeah, I went back and I looked at it just to make sure that we didn't have anything mapped out. We have geocoding software that we can pinpoint every one of our students that is enrolled with Manor ISD. So, but we have that on there, yes. So the basic two polygons is what we call them, just drawing the boundaries on it, is really going to be affecting the Decker corridor to Oak Meadows and also the PME to going to Blake Manor. Those are our two.
Let's just stop there for a moment to give the board a chance to absorb or ask any questions. Really, we're addressing also Presidential Meadows is your second most overcrowded school. And so it's relieving them so they can also absorb pre-K since they're moving the pre-K back. This setup will help everyone except Shadow Glen. Shadow Glen is much more difficult to address. And we'll talk about that in a little while, but I'm going to recommend we start putting portables out there for the near future. The only other option you have, and this is a discussion item, is there's a neighborhood just north of Presidential Meadows that's in Shadow Glen. You can bring that to Presidential Meadows, some of that. But my fear is 5 years from now, we're going to end up needing an elementary school up north, and we're just going to move them right back to the elementary school. So then that's not real nice to move them 2 times within 5 years.
How are our, how is, and I may have missed something, but at MRA, Manor Rise Academy, how is our enrollment at the elementary level pre-K through 5th? And is that a possibility to change and move students there?
Yes.
Yes.
We've talked about it. It's not a very big school in terms of an elementary. If that makes sense, because of the 6th, 7th, and 8th that's been added onto it. It can draw off some students. I considered about drawing boundaries for it. But I decided to leave it as is in case we sometime in the future get into a problem where we need another school, we can go for that one. And draw those boundaries, basically as emergency relief for Shadow Glen if we have to.
And that you need an elementary school.
We might have to draw down students from like that north side.
Okay.
So let's say 5 years from now, the board or the community doesn't want to do another elementary school. That which MRA would need to be our kind of relief valve for that.
What is the maximum capacity for Shadow Glen?
670.
And so they're at 656.
And they're going to be over 700 next year. Which, just a reminder, going over capacity is not necessarily a bad thing. You really actually get what we were talking about, trying to get to 110% capacity before you start thinking about building other schools or doing things. Otherwise, you're not efficient. You'll end up with really small schools.
So Manor Rise Academy actually has from kindergarten to 6th grade, well, kindergarten, 2nd, and 6th, 198 students.
There was, I think, close to 200, 170.
And again, what is the capacity for Manor Rise Academy for those 3 grades?
For right now, I have to go back and look. I know the total number is like 800, somewhere around there, but we'd have to go back
And there's
and look
something
at for those.
196 or 198.
But we have projections, I believe, on the one of the slides here that I'll show you that we have projections to go to about a little bit over 300
For next year.
for next year.
For 6 through 8.
Yes.
I'm looking at that.
Yeah, one of the things you got.
I'm talking about just this up to 6th grade. That's what we're gonna be at, projected at 300, just up until 6th grade?
We're bringing in 2 grade levels, so we're bringing in 3rd graders and 7th graders in next year.
Okay.
So we still need room to bring in the 4th graders and then the 8th graders as well, and then the 5th graders. So it's a tiered system.
Well, yeah, I know that. I was just trying to figure out if there's a way to relieve Shadow Glen of being over, instead of moving portables over, is there a way to, bring more kids over to Manor Rise Academy since we're struggling
One thing
with
that
getting enrollment there? Same as we repurpose the Wild Horse.
The only issue with that is we would have to draw a boundary around Manor Rise Academy, and that is something we can do. If the board is wanting to do that kind of movement of students. I was considering talking about doing a kind of the northern side of Shadow Glen to MRA, because you don't want to do, I know it's not traditional, but if you drew a boundary around Manor Rise Academy, you would literally be taking kids who are within sight of Shadow Glen because they're so close together. So my idea would have been to bus kids from the north side up near the senior high school and above down to MRA if we did that. And one way we're exploring MRA may be able to help is Shadow Glen is predicted to have 75 pre-K students next year. They can't fit at Shadow Glen. And so right now, I told the community we were going to put them at Blake Manor, and in talking with some of the community members, we're trying to rethink that to see if we can't put them at Manor Rise Academy.
That would be.
We're literally going to have to walk that campus and count furniture, but we're going to try to figure out if we can do that.
Chief Coker actually visited, and we actually visited on Friday this morning as well. So he's looking at numbers right now to go some classrooms.
At Manor
Manor
Rise.
ISD.
That
When
would,
you say you'll have to count furniture at Manor Rise?
Yes. I think one of the things that we ran into is also restrooms. Restrooms are a little bit farther away from the classrooms that we have, and they're little bitty.
Manor Rise wasn't built with pre-K fund. And so we've got to also think long-term was how many kids are going to kind of funnel their way up through that, and we don't accidentally force out 8th graders who are expecting to go their entire career through.
I wonder, well, we can talk later, but moving maybe the higher level over the Manor Rise Academy, like 5th graders, and then open up rooms for pre-K to state Shadow Glen. Some of the 5th graders are walkers from Shadow Glen, and that's still in their neighborhood. I think it would be good for y'all to explore different options and bring them to the board. Is that okay with everyone? I've seen some of the feedback from the community, and I've also received some phone calls that I asked to, I sent to you guys. But, there is a problem being foreseen in the community with Shadow Glen pre-K kids being moved all the way to Blake Manor.
So the goal is to, let's get the Shadow Glen pre-Kers closer to home. Gotcha.
Okay, go ahead. Sir.
So another item, if you go to the next slide. Just a slide to show utilization, what we were talking about, just try to get them a little bit balanced out. After the proposal for the Blake Manor move and also for the Oak Meadows move, is that we would come up with about one campus would be in the 90%, 3 campuses, utilization rate, 3 campuses would be in the 80%, 80%. 3 of them would be in the 70%, and then 1 of them would be in the 60%. That gives us a little bit more balance on utilization and resources that we have throughout the district. Any questions? That's for one more slide. These are our projected numbers for enrollment. The 2023-24 is highlighted in yellow here. This is what we currently have. These are projections for next year. Now, there's a lot of factors there. As far as yields are concerned with our demographer has showed us that, of course, they have different rates, right? Depending on where the growth is at, depending what type of complexes or apartment complexes are, or homes being built. So they have a formula and they give us a projection as well. Birth rates, permits that are taken out within Manor ISD or within the city of Manor, and these are projections right now that we share with us. Everything that's highlighted in yellow is really where we're looking at capacity, almost over capacity utilization for all our campuses.
Why don't you put it back, I know it's last time, why don't you put it back on the map, and so.
Okay, go back.
Take any other comments, because I definitely heard that we want to explore the pre-K for Shadow Glen and see if we can't get it back. We will work on that this week.
Any other comments, concerns, thoughts? Want them to bring us back some sort of option you've been thinking about as a vision?
Just when will we get it back and what does the timeline look? I know time is also of the essence, so just timeline, how soon we can start.
We want to have the community meetings next week. So we want to get that as soon as it gets out there. We want to get in front of it so people understand factual information about what's happening. We're planning on having one at Blake Manor and one at Oak Meadows. Those are actually 2 schools closest to the neighborhood.
And those are going to be the ones most affected?
Correct. Those are really the ones that are affected.
And it's going to be in the evening, correct?
Correct.
Are you going to provide food?
You should.
I'm just saying that if we want people to really hear.
Is gonna come.
And I think we'll also have it in English and in Spanish.
That was another thing, is making sure.
Childcare.
Yeah, well, and the one at Oak Meadows.
Like
So Blake Manor, sorry, Blake Manor, where we're leaving from Presidential Meadows and
Right.
they're going to Blake Manor. So is the concern really going to be the Blake Manor that those kids are coming there, or do we not need to get in front of the Presidential Meadows families that are going there? Because if those are the ones that are gonna be moving, it makes sense to also have conversations with those families
Well,
too.
we're actually targeting the Presidential Meadow families at the meeting at Blake Manor. And one of the reasons we talked about whether to have the meeting at Presidential Meadows or Blake Manor,
Here's your new campus.
Yeah, so they can see.
and it's actually closer than Presidential Meadows. That's the thing we want to show. Joe, can you point to that neighborhood below the 220? There's where all your kids are, below the number 220.
And where's Presidential Meadows on that map?
Oh,
where's
so
Blake
they'll
Manor on that
stay
map?
on this side
Yeah,
of
they'll stay on this.
290.
They'll point to Blake Manor for them.
Oh, Blake Manor, the campus?
Yeah, that's
What
true.
neighborhood is that? Where
That's
we're
a
moving these
lot
kids?
of people.
What
This is rural. This is just,
Oh,
it's really like a spine road that you just go out and it curves out and it just goes every which way.
Yes,
Is there
yes.
a
Yeah,
street
yeah.
around there that you could give me?
I'm sorry?
A street around there that you could give me?
Hog Valley Road.
Okay, I know where it's at.
So you say you project
Oh,
to
I
save
really
15
know.
minutes on the right.
Yeah.
It looks like more to me.
Yeah, we would look at 15 minutes, at least 15 minutes. That's what we're seeing.
That's
You're
a
right,
good idea.
Vivian, that's like a 30-minute drive to
Yes.
Presidential.
But like, if you're doing it next week, do we have enough time to really, like, get the word out? We'll have plenty of.
Well, we hope so, and I mean, that's obviously the goal to get out there. It's kind of a balancing act between making sure we give people enough time and notice versus we want to make sure we get out there in front of them as quickly as possible and not people make up their own stories about what we're doing.
I mean, I would say even pizza, like,
How many students?
something.
It's 220.
People.
So
Elementary
is part of Dr. Shimani the necessity to move quickly, is it based on policy as well, as far as rezoning and when we need to get that out for the next year?
I don't know of anything in policy. My biggest concern is staffing. And I can remember, as long as we vote at the end of March, we're still good with the staffing. Once we go into April, it gets a little bit hairier with staffing because then staff doesn't know if they're transferring or not. And so I'd like to be able to vote at the end of March. Now I can, if you know your community, so if you think I need to push some of these meetings out further, that's not a problem for us. Or have other meetings.
Well, I think if we, just my opinion, at least 2 each. So like if you're gonna have one next week,
Okay.
you have that same meeting at that same place in a couple of weeks after that.
Could we
Um,
also,
To catch all, as many as we can.
could we also look at, because I know that the principals' coffees are usually really well attended. Could we look at if any of those are coming up and getting your team out there to those events?
That's okay.
That's an excellent idea. Absolutely.
With a pamphlet or something, information that they
If they're doing any performances coming up, because when kids perform, the parents come.
Well, he gave us all of these activities, so I imagine y'all might want to tap in on sometime
But yeah, I think it makes sense
to
to
give
use
the pamphlet.
all of the events coming
Well,
up to.
I only worry about presenting is that, the only impacting part of the kids, and I don't want to take up a bunch of parents who aren't involved in that.
And then they
so-
get scared.
But I think those are some good ideas to try to catch some of the parents.
My question was, the new bus transportation port, how far is that gonna be from where they pick up, like, minute-wise? How long is it gonna take them next year, once it opens, to drive all the way and get to those locations?
It's gonna add, I know, when I was talking to Amir, especially on this side of town,
Yes.
it was gonna add 15 minutes at least.
Okay,
15 minutes is what he
So
said.
how
But we
much
can
time
prep for that.
are they doing now?
Because right now, we're kind of off base. As you know, we're at Manor High School right now. So in reality, we have a bottleneck there in the mornings, right? Because of that, and then in the afternoon and so forth. So it's gonna take us maybe another, I say because when we switched over here, it automatically added 20 minutes to our schedule. So based on that, it's probably gonna be a wash that what we're doing right
One future, and I don't know, but we've talked about creating what we do call satellite operation, like 290 north and then south of 290. And that's always a possibility, but that's in the future, because that'll require some deciding what we want to do with the property over this way, whether we want to keep it that or do we want to do something else with that. So there's kind of an opportunity cost there.
now. Because we do have land in the high cost.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm hearing is everyone's moving to Lagos Elementary?
That way. Every day.
You all feel free to give her grief. She's getting her superintendent certification.
Oh.
So you can pepper her with questions. That's what she's here taking notes tonight.
Congratulations. All right. Anyone have any more questions, concerns, comments? If not,
I would just add, if it's an evening, especially in that area, that's our mostly economically disadvantaged population, I would try to get food, even if it's pizza, for that evening, just to attract, you know.
I know,
Whoever can sponsor
just
pizza.
a quick comment. I know when we were having the parent engagement meetings every month at different schools, if we had food, so many families would come. And if we didn't, that we'd have a very small attendance. And then the performance of the kids, if they were performing, parents were there, and then they were informed about the state of the district and how everything was going. And by the way, if y'all feel inclined, maybe we can start those up again at some point. They were very informative.
Well, we've got a couple on the calendar.
Good.
We just haven't
Recruit
shared
more
them. I forget to share them. They might be on that sheet I just gave you some dates.
Great.
Even get your PTA involved, maybe they give out free popcorn or something.
Maybe make phone calls, if some of our parent liaisons could target these kids that are gonna be affected and personally invite them.
Even the Chamber of Commerce's, there's you can make an announcement. I don't know, I'm just saying, a lot of small businesses, they could probably just sponsor a pizza or dinner or whatever,
Right.
so.
Okay, well, with that, I'm sorry, the next regular scheduled board meeting is February 20th. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
That's so moved, that we adjourn.
Dr. Thomas, second. Right. Ms. Guerrero, all those in favor?
At
Motion passes.
7:12 p.m.
6-0.
Very timely,
Thank you so much.
moving. Thank you, Dr. Kamani.